Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment here. Just giving a moment for participants to join the Zoom room. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Next slide. Welcome, everyone, to this afternoon's webinar, New Jersey Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health Webinar Series. This is session 9 on staff self-care. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center in collaboration with the New Jersey Department of Education. The Northeastern Caribbean MHTTC is housed at Rutgers School of Health Professions, Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is Dr. Ann Murphy, and I'm the co-director of this center, and will be introducing our center and our wonderful webinar presenters today. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to people with mental health conditions. We encourage you to visit the MHTTC network site for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org. Our center also receives currently supplemental funding to support educators in the K-12 schools and staff to address student mental health. Next slide, please. On your screen is the date of our upcoming session in this series. This is one final session that had to be rescheduled from an earlier date on systems partners, which will be taking place on Wednesday, June 15th at 3 o'clock. We hope to see you there. Individual coaching sessions are also being offered to provide you more targeted support to your district level teams. During the 1-hour session, we'll support you in developing your comprehensive school mental health framework and provide an action plan to guide your next steps. These sessions are available to all schools and districts on a first come, first served basis by reservation only. We do have 2 sessions available for next week, Tuesday, June 14th at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. If you are interested in receiving individualized support, please go ahead and register for one of those sessions. A link to register for those coaching sessions is provided in the chat. If you are interested in staying up to date with the events and products of our center, please sign up to receive our email communications. You can sign up using the bit.ly link that is provided on the screen. Following the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey. We value your feedback and we use it to improve our activities and to inform future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys. So we thank you in advance for providing your feedback. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website along with the New Jersey DOE's website in the next couple days to a week, so you can use it for reference or also share it with your colleagues. This presentation was prepared by the Northeastern Caribbean MHTTC under a cooperative agreement from SAMHSA. All material appearing in this presentation is in the public domain and can be reproduced or copied without our explicit permission. We do ask that you provide adequate citation of the original source. At this time, Dr. Delphin Rittman serves as the Assistant Secretary for the Mental Health and Substance Use Center at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and don't reflect any official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. We would be very appreciative for your interaction with our presenters throughout this session. You can do that by using the chat feature, or you can post any comments or questions you have through the Q&A. As time allows, at the end of the presentation, we will address any questions or comments that are provided. We wanted to just remind everyone that the MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all of its activities, and we encourage you to do so as well. We use language that's strengths-based and hopeful, that's inclusive and accepting, healing-centered, and trauma-responsive. We invite individuals to participate in their own recovery journeys. We use person-first language that's free of labels. We are non-judgmental and work to avoid any assumptions, and we use language that is respectful, clear, and understandable, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. We have three wonderful presenters joining us today. We have Dr. Michelle Zechner, who's an assistant professor at Rutgers in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. She's been working in the areas of health, wellness, and self-care strategies for over 15 years. Her work has centered on helping people live better lives despite challenges. Dr. Zechner has worked in a variety of settings, both community and inpatient mental health settings, nursing homes, hospitals, higher education, and in-home services. In her current role, she works with a wide range of health professionals, providing consultation to build staff resilience and flourishing. She also teaches students and conducts research on motivational health and wellness practices. Sam Hendrickson has over 25 years of experience in New Jersey's public education system, spanning roles of elementary and middle school teacher, assistant principal, and district level director of human resources. Since losing his vision over 2 years ago, Sam is currently writing Act 2 of his life, facilitating support groups and providing one-to-one peer support services for individuals who are blind and visually impaired. He is involved in education consulting and is a national and international speaker on topics including special education, autism, parenting, marriage, and blindness. Sam is a lucky husband and proud father of 6 children, including a 22-year-old son with autism. Shashi Gundala has more than 17 years of experience in the education field. During her tenure, she has been a teacher, an assistant principal, the supervisor for media literacy, and the supervisor of nursing at a public school district. She is currently the principal of a K-12 school for students with special needs. Sashi is a technology in education enthusiast and has presented at numerous conferences on the subject. Her interests and passions include helping students with special needs and writing about various topics, including education. Sashi also enjoys listening to music, writing lyrics, yoga, dance, reading, and spending family time with her husband, 2 boys, and her puggle. We are thrilled to have all 3 of you here. We welcome you, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murphy. So my name is Christy Ravowski. I am a senior training and consultation specialist with the MHTTC. And I'm sure many of you remember my familiar face throughout this series. So today's session objectives, before I turn it over to Dr. Zechner, are really to just describe organizational approaches to self-care and wellness, understand how we can apply the MTSS framework to create system educator wellness and self-care, and identify some effective strategies from our New Jersey district exemplar. Dr. Zechner, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really delighted to kick us off with a brief self-care break because I think we all should be modeling this. So we're going to start out with a pause. So I really encourage you to take a breath, sit back and join me in this brief self-care activity. So to pause, we simply stop. Stop what you're doing, thinking, and reacting. This is a brief activity. It takes about 1 to 3 minutes, and there are 3 steps to the activity. So take a breath, sit back. You can stand if you prefer. Now check in. Sit or stand quietly. Stay upright and awake through the process. Relax. If you'd like, you can try closing your eyes or letting them rest quietly in front of you. Become aware of the feelings in your body. What do you feel? Notice what it's like to sit or stand. Pay attention to how your clothes feel on your skin. Feel your muscles and joints from the inside of your body. You don't need to change anything, just become aware. Focus on the breath. Now become aware of your breathing. Notice the sensations of your breath coming in and going out. You don't need to change your breath at all, just be aware of breathing. Make your breath the focus of your attention. Your mind may wander, and that's fine. When you notice you're thinking or worrying, just shift your focus back to your breathing. Some people like to say something to themselves as they breathe in or breathe out, like calm or peace, or breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. Before you end this short pause, refocus on how your body feels. Notice your body as a whole. Have any sensations changed? And when you're ready, I invite you to rejoin us in this presentation. Thank you, everyone, for taking this brief pause with me. We wanted to model a brief pause and how you might consider using pause or mindfulness at your location. Next slide, please. We're going to take a few minutes now. I'd like to offer you some thoughts and ideas about how school administrators can support self-care and wellness among staff. There's a lot out there about strategies for self-care at the individual level, but this has really left out the important role that administrators and supervisors can take to empower and encourage teachers and staff to be well using built-in self-care policies and practices. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some general approaches to self-care through organizational support. We can support self-care through school staff and teachers through fostering staff voice, offering opportunities for teachers to participate in decision-making to support their professional growth and self-care, and connections to the learning environment. There's a lot of literature that suggests that when we do this, it increases satisfaction with work, builds the team, and offers new creative ideas to problem solving. Also, we want to offer opportunities for safe and supportive staff engagement using a philosophy of curiosity. I know we all strive to get input from different levels of staff, and that's so important, but we want to make sure that people feel safe offering these ideas as well. So some examples of this might include having some group expectations, like deeply listening to all suggestions without judgment, ensuring no interruptions, expressing thanks to the person sharing the ideas or questions, encouraging open-mindedness, and acknowledging each person who speaks, who does the speaking. We want to try to promote those feelings of belonging, respect, value, and trust for staff and teachers. A sense of connection to the school and other staff is critical to enhance positive work experience. And I imagine you're doing a lot of these things and other things to try to create a safe working environment. Consider also, and you may have done this, but looking at a dedicated wellness environments for self-care to bolster staff spaces. Things like plants, beautiful pictures, comfortable seats, something that where a person could actually take a step back and do some reflections. Also, offer an opportunity for professional development. I suspect you're already doing this to offer self-care curricula on topics related to managing emotional stress of teaching or working in schools, using curriculum to build skills to strengthen social and emotional well-being. Some examples of that might be mindfulness-based stress reduction, movement facilitated groups, stress reduction or coping meetings, or even things like entertainment and lighthearted things can be very helpful for people in times of stress. Also, encouraging boundaries. Often we have a culture of sending emails all the time and expecting people to respond to them at all times. It's helpful to establish that boundary so that the culture of email is within the workday, and discourage late night emails or emailing while someone is ill or on vacation. I know I personally have a very hard time disengaging when I'm on vacation from checking my email. Also, you're probably doing this, but another idea is to recognize teacher and staff strengths. We all have things that we're really good at. Some of us are really creative, others are really good with numbers. Some of us tell funny jokes. So how can we emphasize those staff strengths and recognize accomplishments so that people feel valued and seen and part of the community? Another example of something I tried to kick off our meeting with is to create a natural opportunity for self-care during meetings. So I started us off using a pause. We've got those materials that are scripted. If you'd like them, we'd be happy to share them. But you could even do something much simpler and faster. There's asking someone to take 3 breaths at the beginning of a meeting. There's another strategy called stop, which means stop what you're doing, take a breath, observe, and proceed with your day. Those are really easy ways to begin a meeting or even end a meeting or interject when some maybe emotions are getting very high, and build those into the meetings. Now, the last one is going to be, I think, kind of tricky, but administration and supervisors have to model self-care and wellness practices, such as taking actions to build their own wellness, like walking at lunch or not responding to emails after a certain time, because modeling really helps establish a new culture and emphasis on wellness and self-care. Next slide, please. So I wanted to offer some practical approaches to convey support for self-care from administration to teachers and staff. One of the most important, and I think it's very simple, but it's very hard at the same time, is communication. So much of our communication right now is via email or texting, which isn't always easy to convey a positive tone. And it can take longer to sort of receive that reaction if someone has sort of taken what you've said in a way that you didn't intend. It can take a few texts or a few emails to really get to the bottom of that. So it's really, really critical to extend courtesy and compassion, because that demonstrates care now more than ever. Compassion is so helpful because we're all struggling with something every day, and particularly these days. And if we feel that we're receiving compassion from our workplace, we can find more meaning in our work and feel more satisfaction with our jobs. It really also does help to build positive relationships with others. In our communication also, it's really important, and I'm sure that you're doing these steps as well, is to acknowledge and be aware in a communication that our lives are different now. Each of us may have different challenges that impact our work. There's so many of our home lives are much more impactful on our jobs than they ever were in terms of, COVID risk, COVID infections, our family being caregivers, etc. So when we feel that we're being supported in that way, it does convey a sense of organizational support. Another one that often comes up is ensuring equal support and treatment, regardless of gender, type of employment, working hours, or tenure, really conveys a sense of fairness and really can help staff feel valued. Now, I bring this up. This may not be an issue at your school, or it may be. I was working at a hospital at one point where the rules for leaving were unequally applied. So there was an official policy requiring a doctor verification, but this was only applied to newer staff and not always to staff who had good relationships with their supervisors. This really led to a sense of being demoralized and favoritism. You may have similar experiences in your school system of who may get different treatment based on gender or type of employment. Of course, we want all staff to feel supported by administration, and fairness in that support can really build more positive relationships. We also want to offer opportunities for networking. Professional networks help people learn from one another and connect during times of celebration and difficulties. Be sure to connect principals and teachers together to allow teachers to more easily obtain help from principals when needed to develop their instructional and leadership capacity. So these informal kind of connections can be very, very helpful and establish trust. I want to give you a quick example from, I was working with a mental health program recently, and I was talking to the CEO, and she said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you about our new wellness initiative." I said, "What's that?" She said, "I call it the Pancake Initiative." I said, "The what?" And she said, "The Pancake Initiative." So she and other administration went to a particular location and made pancakes once a quarter for their staff, which completely delighted staff, made them feel surprised and welcomed. And it really gave an opportunity for informal communication. So think about the Pancake Initiative, or maybe it's the Donut Initiative. I don't know, something like that. Which goes along with the next point, which is building relationships. It's important at these days to check in and inquire about personal health and family life when appropriate. This really demonstrates a sense of connection and well-being and opportunities for care, listening to the responses. There's a great slogan that I'm working with someone from the Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, Dr. Brazeau, who created this great slogan, "Check you, check two," suggesting that we check in with ourselves and at least two coworkers each day to sort of build that social connection and build that culture of care and self-care. And then finally, encouraging work to home transition, really finding opportunities to help staff let go of the workday and the stress and transition into their home life. A great example I saw early in the pandemic was a British hospital developed a campaign to help their staff leave work at work by creating a going home checklist, and they put it right by the door so everyone had to walk by it with a list of suggestions, including acknowledge one thing that was difficult today, let it go. Next, be proud of the work you've done. Next, consider 3 things that went well. Check on your coworkers before you leave. Are they okay? Are you okay? Your supervisor is here to listen and support you. Now switch your focus to home, rest and recharge, and also offering thanks to your staff and teachers for the work they do. I thought that was a really nice, novel way of a going home checklist. Next slide, please. We definitely are probably the very best. I know in the organizations I've worked with, they're really good at focusing on mission and values. I suspect that you all are as well. It's very clear why the staff are there, why the teachers are there, why the principals are there, why everyone is involved is teaching and making the world a better place through teaching our children. And having peer support, really connecting with others who are also in the situation with us. Next slide, please. Some examples of building self-care culture into school systems. And these are some ideas from other areas, and you may come up with your own. I welcome those, actually. So we want So limiting emails to working hours, I think I mentioned that. Respecting sick days. So if someone has surgery or is unwell, then you certainly want to honor that and let the person recover before a lot of emails come in. Giving the person regular recognition of what they've done well, and gathering feedback and input from what's going well, what's maybe could be improved, and beginning meetings with self-care. And, it just occurs to me that I have neglected to offer the poll. My apologies. Could we launch the poll on strategies that your school uses to support self-care and wellness? Thank you. So take a moment. I'd be really curious to learn, what are the strategies your school uses to support self-care and wellness? And you can check as many as appropriate. So go ahead if you can and respond to those poll. I'm not able to see any responses. I don't know if someone who could see the responses could share with us what's coming through.
Sure, Michelle. People are just indicating now. We'll just give them another few seconds, but it looks like some people are foster staff voice and choice, safe and supportive staff engagement, self-care space, other professional development, encouraging boundaries, focus on stress. Looks like we've got a response for a check, at least for everyone. I will share the results now so everyone can see.
Thank you so much, Anne. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So really creating that safe, supportive environment and offering professional development seems like sort of the winners. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Next slide, please. So maybe you're all ready to make some additional changes or greater changes on how to support self-care in your system. Here are a few ideas about introducing new initiative. Culture change does take time. It's important to measure any changes, and implementation strategies really are important because it gathers input from all the stakeholders, takes small actions, assesses impact, and take further action. So next slide, please. One model that's really helpful for this is the Plan, Do, Check, Act model, because it asks the following questions. What problems are we trying to solve? What change might we introduce and why? And how will we know that a change is actually an improvement? So these steps are outlined very well in a resource that we're offering in this presentation, a manual on continuous improvement strategies, which provides a helpful step-by-step guide for the Plan, Do, Check, Act method. And that comes out, and I think it will offer some wonderful suggestions. I'd like to turn it over to Christy now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for really just helping us reimagine what it means to implement organizational approaches that really prioritize and value the self-care and wellness of employees and educators. So now that we've had a basic understanding about general organizational approaches, I want us to take a closer look at how we can really align staff wellness within the MTSS framework. But before I do that, I am curious to know from all of you, what does staff well-being mean to you? So if you could just take a moment, drop that in the chat. When we talk about staff well-being, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? For me, something that comes up is just that, organizations really value work-life balance. And I think Michelle mentioned this, that, administrators kind of model those practices, right? Supervisors model those practices, and that we're just reflective, right, on those practices and how they impact us. All right, next slide, please. And we'll wait for those responses to come into the chat. You guys can certainly just take your time here. We'll kind of move along with our next slide. So this is what we know since the pandemic. According to the CDC, teachers' mental health has really been affected by new instructional challenges and barriers to implementing COVID-19 prevention measures. About 27% of teachers reported symptoms consistent with clinical depression, and 37% reported self-reported symptoms consistent with generalized anxiety. About 53% of teachers say they are thinking of leaving the profession, more now than ever before. And teachers also reported having more difficulty focusing on their work and were twice more likely to report mental health distress. And I'm sure that some of these headlines that you see here that have been taken from various news sources may even strike a chord with many of you, right? So we need to be nurtured too. Many teachers say they're reaching a breaking point, or the mental health crisis causing teachers to quit. Today, I want you to know that you aren't alone. This is really a national crisis. We've reached a critical point where we have to stop and rethink our traditional practices. Organizational approaches to support educator wellness are no longer optional, but really a necessity if we want to sustain the educational workforce. And I would add that this work is critical really to the success of our students and our community at large. Next slide, please. So I know we've all heard and even probably used the term burnout when talking with colleagues, family, and friends. But I wanted to take a moment really to just revisit what burnout means. So occupational stress is really a part of every profession. Prolonged and cumulative experiences of job stress over time may lead to burnout. But burnout is a really special type of work-related stress. It's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, really caused by long-term exposure to demanding work situations. And teacher stress and burnout are really associated with many negative outcomes for teachers, students, and the educational system at large. This includes things like increased absenteeism and teacher attrition. Teacher stress can also have a negative impact on students in the classroom, including higher levels of disruptive behaviors and lower academic achievement. So now let's take a closer look at what the research tells us about the causes of teacher burnout. So an article was published last year by Educational Psychology Review, which really examined over 10 years of research that looked at the causes of teacher burnout. What they found is that teacher burnout is often related to the management of difficult student behavior, so classroom management, workload and lack of work-life balance, and an unbalance between teaching demands and even available resources. So ultimately, if the adults are not healthy, how can they look after the students? So where do we begin? It really starts with our MTSS framework. So I'm sure we are all pretty familiar with multi-tiered systems of support. And this framework is typically used to help us organize evidence-based approaches for our student academic and behavioral supports. But we don't typically consider using the MTSS framework when addressing staff wellness. So as a reminder, the MTSS framework starts with looking at universal supports to see how we can promote positive health and prevent challenges for everyone. We know this is considered tier 1, followed by adding more targeted group supports for those that need them, which is tier 2. And lastly, tier 3, which is more of those individualized supports for those with the most intensive needs. So when considering school staff, wellness, and self-care strategies, this same framework can be used to organize strategies from both the individual perspective for self-care and the school's perspective, which is more of an organizational wellness approach. So now I'm going to break down each tier and give you some wellness strategies and examples that you can even use with your staff. So at tier 1, one of the things that you can consider is conducting a needs assessment. Survey your staff to have a better understanding of common stressors and coping skills. It's also a really good way to understand what available resources are in place to support adult well-being, both physical and emotional, and identify any resource gaps. This process is actually very similar to resource mapping, which is outlined in more detail in Chapter 3 of the School Mental Health Resource Guide. Consider also giving staff time back by implementing early dismissal on PD days. Also creating a system that acknowledges staff for their hard work, not just during Teacher Appreciation Week. and giving staff the time to regularly engage in self-care practices. So there is currently one school in South Jersey who has half days built into their school calendar once a month. Students are dismissed early and activities are provided to staff that are related to health and wellness. Things like meditation, exercise, yoga, and even collaborative planning time with colleagues or additional collaborative planning time with colleagues. Next slide, please. So some examples of Tier 2 wellness strategies for staff can include peer support groups that align with the needs of staff. This information can be obtained from the initial needs assessment conducted at Tier 1. Another really great strategy, I'm not sure if folks are familiar with, but it's called Tap In, Tap Out. It's a strategy that is really designed to give teachers an opportunity to recharge. This strategy allows them to call on a peer when they may be feeling overwhelmed, to step outside of their class for a minute, center and calm themselves, and then rejoin their class when they're feeling more at ease. Also consider offering professional development that provides targeted strategies based off of staff's input from the needs assessment. Things like how to practice mindfulness. Next slide. Some Tier 3 strategies may include outlining the support for teachers and school staff who might be returning to school or to work from a difficult life event. Things like the death of a loved one or an illness or even a divorce. Providing local mental health resources or even offering them on site at your school. So the school exemplar in Chapter 10 of the Mental Health Resource Guide highlights how they basically used ESSER funding to hire an additional school social worker that is really dedicated to creating a culture of staff wellness, while also providing direct counseling services to staff. So far, we've really discussed how we can align staff wellness within an MTSS framework and provided practical examples at each tier. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to discuss how schools can really establish a wellness team that can help to coordinate and lead these efforts. Alicia?
Thank you so much, Christy. I just want to start by emphasizing the importance of creating a staff wellness team. Leadership and coordination are really essential to building a culture of self-care and well-being in the school community. And the staff wellness team leads, coordinates, communicates, and helps implement a school-wide system that's committed to this goal. So depending on the school and community, the staff wellness team can be the same team as that's leading the student-focused school-wide MTSS process, or it can be a subcommittee of that leadership team. And when creating a staff wellness team, these are some key considerations. First, the support and endorsement from school leadership, they're really essential for success. And equally important are the buy-in and engagement of school staff, since any efforts to provide self-care and wellness supports for staff without their knowledge or input, they aren't very likely to be successful. Creating a representative team is also key. Ideally, one that's comprised of a diverse group of individuals from different roles within the school community. So we're thinking of classroom teachers, support staff, aides, school mental health professionals, even coaches, administrators, or parents. When creating a wellness team, really try to formalize the process by establishing a time to meet regularly and agreeing on the team structure, creating specific roles such as a note taker or maybe a discussion leader. And if you're wondering how the school wellness team might function, here's some general activities and roles, including gathering information regarding wellness and mental health of staff, assessing, for example, staff strengths and coping resources, stressors, and support needs, collecting information about local resources and services to support staff wellness, ensuring that staff wellness is a visible and enduring school or district policy. The wellness team serves as a conduit for staff voice and participation, really underscoring again the importance of a representative team. The wellness team also develops action plans to address staff well-being and self-care, and it works to ensure that those action plans are carried out. The team also works with administrators to ensure that policies are in place to support staff wellness. And last but not least, the school wellness team takes steps to monitor staff wellness efforts and evaluate progress and on, regarding relevant outcomes. So as a place to start, first steps of the school wellness team would be to conduct a needs assessment, which is important to identify staff wellness needs, available resources to address those needs, and also any gaps in those resources. Then, based on findings from the needs assessment, the team can create an action plan with specific recommendations. And those recommendations should be communicated or shared with the school and district leadership. As I mentioned earlier, demonstrated commitment and visible support of school leadership is foundation to building a culture of staff self-care and well-being. And I also want to mention here that we have to remember to include school and district administrators in their mental health and wellness needs and have those be part of the process. I think there might be a tendency to overlook the needs of leadership in this process, but responding to these needs are really equally important to consider. Finally, creating a tiered curriculum of strategies that align with the MTSS framework, as Christy described, ensures a comprehensive approach to staff wellness in which staff needs are identified and supported on multiple levels, so tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So a table like this one shown here can be very helpful, a very helpful tool in planning tiered strategies and supports for staff self-care and overall wellness. And as this table demonstrates, many strategies can be employed across the tiers as well as contexts of care. So I want to note too that this table can be found in Chapter 10 of the New Jersey Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health Resource Guide. And this chapter is devoted entirely to staff self-care and wellness. To access this guide, you can use the QR code here or the link that will drop in the chat. And in our webinars, we can really only cover the highlights of the guide, but please refer to Chapter 10 for a more in-depth review, along with hyperlinked resources, team reflection questions, and some practical real-world examples of implementation in schools. And before we move on to talking with our educator exemplars today, we wanted to provide you with some additional resources listed here. As always, these slides will be made available to you either on the DOE website or the MHTTC website. And so you can always refer back to them if you're interested or need to go back to some information you think you might have missed. And now I'd like to shift our focus to talking with two longtime educators and school administrators, Sam Hendrickson, former principal and director of human resources with the Marlborough Township School District, and Sashi Gundala, former Marlborough vice principal. And we're going to be learning more from Sam and Sashi about their experiences in working towards transforming school culture in support of staff wellness, drawing from their shared experiences in the Marlborough Township School District, and also beyond that. So thank you, Sam and Sashi, for joining us today. Sashi, all the way from India. I'd like to start here. If you both could just tell us about your background, the school district you served in together, and your journey as administrators trying to build school culture to support staff self-care and overall well-being. I'm going to turn it over to the two of you. Thank you.
Sashi, you can begin if you'd like.
Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all, sharing this time, having these important conversations about self-care and how do we do that individually and how do we collectively do that for the school families that we're a part of. I'm happy to be here. I started some 30 years ago as a middle school English teacher. That led to working in an elementary school as a general teacher for years, and then assistant principalships at middle and elementary levels, and ultimately a elementary school principalship in Marlborough, where I spent almost 11 years in that role. It's where Sashi and I had the opportunity to work together And then my last year in education was spent as the Director of Human Resources in Marlboro. I've been in New Jersey my entire professional career, started in Hopewell Valley Regional School District, then in West Windsor Plainsboro as an assistant principal, and then ultimately my last years in Marlboro. As noted in the beginning, I do have an adult son with moderate to severe autism. And I mention that because I really think it helped shape me as a professional and as a father and human being. In the things that my son has taught me has come to benefit me time and again as an educator. I'm happy to be with you all today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And my journey also began as a teacher in South Brunswick. I taught there for about 8 years, and then I moved to Marlboro. I was hired by Sam, and we worked for a few years. I was his assistant principal, and we did a lot of wonderful things together. I think the best part about Sam and me working together was we worked in tandem. There were some things that he was so awesome at, and there were some things that I was able to contribute to the school. And we fed off of each other's strengths, and that kind of helped the entire community. And that was what was great about our relationship. The staff used to call us the odd funny couple. We brought a lot of humor into how we worked with our staff, and that also kind of helped with how the staff felt being in school. So currently, I am the principal at Easter Seals Academy in Florida. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a school for students with special needs. I got very involved with special needs at Dugan in Marlboro. Sam and I were very keen and focused on this student population, and he got me very interested in this. And I remember a time when they would bring students who were special needs, and Sam and I would always welcome them. And we would be like, yes, sure, like bring them on. And the psychologists, they would say, like, how come you guys are always so ready to take on the students? Because it's not easy. And we were like, that's what we do. And we never shied away from that kind of work. And that was how we worked. And it was his encouragement that pushed me into this realm, and now I'm enjoying my stint as a principal at this new place. So that was a little bit of what.
Did you want to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you've used to support staff self-care?
Certainly. And I just a little disclaimer. I know it was mentioned that I lost my vision a few years ago, so I do apologize. I do have some usable vision that I use with the adaptive technology that you can't see on your end. But what you may notice is my forehead or my receding hairline, and that's another webinar for another time. But I do apologize if you don't see my face all the time as I interact with the technology that I have before me. But getting back, so yes, Alicia and others, to echo some of the things that were already said, I think assessing staff needs is important. But I want to offer something maybe new or different. We had structures put in place, team meetings where we meet with grade level people regularly. And those were meetings that had formal agendas, but there would always be a spot on the agenda as a check-in where the teachers felt that they could openly share. So that was a regular kind of systematic thing that we had throughout the school year. That met every other week. We had faculty meetings every month where there was opportunities. But I want to share something, a little insight that I've had since preparing for this and reflecting on my career. Some of the best information that I received on staff needs came from one-on-one conversations with teachers. These were unplanned, informal, hallway conversations, times just stopping and visiting, maybe a conversation that happened after an observation, reflection. And then when I learned of maybe one need and I began having individualized conversations with others and asking questions, I began to put patterns together. And I found that that was sometimes consistent with what may have happened on a survey, a formal survey, or what may have happened at a faculty meeting or a grade level meeting. And sometimes different needs emerged. So I credit that with being able and being present to have those kinds of conversations, but also the trust that we over time developed with our staff so that they could feel comfortable talking to us in person, one-on-one. So I offer that as another way to gather information about what your staff may need. Sashi, did you want to add before we move on, or I can?
No, continue, Pam, and I'll
Okay.
add. Okay.
The other thing I think, and just in terms of staff needs, and one of the things that Sashi and I think were able to do early on, and by the way, my relationship with Sashi, I was brought up as an assistant principal in what I would say is a very traditional or a conventional relationship with my principal. So as in all but one capacity, that I have a principal that really did things differently with me. But I had, out of the 3 assistant principalships, 2 of them, I was brought in very traditionally. And meaning that I would handle discipline. There were certain things were just relegated to the assistant principal, vice principal. But based on my last assistant principalship, I decided to model my relationship with a assistant principal in the way that that one was modeled for me, that I really felt one and the same. And there are subtle but powerful differences between the 2 jobs. But when a principal is very transparent with an assistant principal, you can really form the kind of team that you have. And when teachers see that relationship between the 2 leaders in the building, they know and can trust that they can model that in their own relationships with one another. So one of the things early on that Sashi and I did was identify what are the big sources of stress for our teachers, what's making this job difficult for them. And on the culture of the building that we had inherited when we began, one of the things was, as most elementary schools, as you might imagine, look, they're predominantly women, many of them mothers. And so they're working mothers. And maybe it was just something that was specific to the elementary school that we were in, but anytime a mother had a sick child, it was the mother who got the call from their school nurse that had to leave early and take care of their own child. There was a lot of stress as we began our leadership in this particular school around the idea of leaving early and the equity with that and the procedures and things like that. And we had this one moment at a faculty meeting where this was just a big source of stress as these mothers and teachers tried to figure out how to navigate life. And we did a fairness exercise, and be very quick. Some of you may have heard this before, as after all good ideas are really just borrowed or stolen from other people, as this one probably is. But I asked the teacher to come forward and sit on a stool in front of the faculty. We got a red marker. We put a red mark on her finger and said that she's been cut and she was bleeding. And I held up 3 Band-Aids and I said, is it fair for me to give her a Band-Aid? And before this, we worked and established a working definition of what fairness meant. And the staff said, fairness means everybody gets the same thing. And after all, we're in elementary school, and when you're passing out cupcakes at a birthday, you better have one for every student or else it wouldn't be fair. And fairness means, everybody gets equal things. So I said to the staff, okay, our definition of fairness as we know it is everybody gets the same thing, equality. I said, but is it fair that I give this teacher who's cut her finger a Band-Aid? I only have 3. There are 50 of you. I don't have enough Band-Aids to give everybody 1. And the staff, interestingly, became sort of in a dilemma. They said, well, sure, it's fair. And I pointed to the definition. I said, but not according to your definition. So we redefined what fairness meant in our building. Fairness meant, ultimately, one teacher had spoken out, said it's fair because she's bleeding and she needs a Band-Aid. So fairness became about what people need. Fairness meant you get what you need. And it didn't have anything to do with equality. And as soon as we began practicing that concept of fairness with our staff, things began to change. They realized that it's okay to need something and that I can get what I need. And I don't have to get confused or hung up with this idea, is it fair to my colleagues that I leave early because I have a sick child? I can do that. And there'll be a time where I might be able to give back to help somebody else out. That was one of the overall kind of consistent themes that began to be realized throughout the building, throughout month by month, year by year. And it's one of the things I am very proud of. And I think it contributed a lot to staff wellness.
At this place, I just want to piggyback on what Sam said and just add one of the great was to just check with their colleagues and say that, come to us with a solution saying, okay, I have a problem, I need to go, but here's a solution. I already found somebody to cover for me, and that takes, the pressure off of us too, and it makes it easier for us to say, like, yes, go ahead, like your class is covered, so you can leave early. But of course, we would add that if you're not able to find and you really need to leave, then just come let us know and we'll figure it out. But oftentimes this, I think, encourages staff to talk to each other and say like, okay, can you cover my class? And can you, the give and take, and that improved their own relationships with each other. So even though they were doing it for us, ultimately it worked out that it was something they also those lasting relationships.
Before we advance the slide, Alicia, I'll share one quick anecdotal thing, if I may.
Sure.
And I think it had a lot to do with building trust and relationship with staff. When I was in principal school, I learned about things like espoused theory and theory of action. And in layman's terms, that just means do what you say you're going to do and keep doing that. Just do it consistently, day in and day out. When I was a teacher in Hopewell, I was non-tenured, looking to get tenure, and I had my first observation with my principal. I began polling every teacher in the building secretly in the faculty room and so forth on my grade level. What is he looking for? What is he looking for in an observation? And incredibly, the same 2 responses came out. Make sure your bulletin boards are complete and very decorative and visually appealing, and make sure you write the objective of the lesson on your board. He will write you up if you don't have those 2 things done. Now, I'm not here to debate the quality or the value of bulletin boards or writing the objective on the board for a lesson. But what I found interesting was that no matter who I asked, they had the same 2 answers. This principal managed to brand himself. He was able to communicate what his expectations were so that no matter who you asked, they understood. And I thought about how that made the staff feel, at least when it came to observations. They knew what he wanted and they were able to deliver it, and they had great observations. Observations are a very big source of stress. I've never been in a school where they haven't been. And so it's one place where you're getting evaluated and judged. When you're able to clearly communicate what you expect and how you can support teachers with that, I think it helps the staff wellness. I think it helped everybody knowing that there'd be no surprises during an observation. And I was just flabbergasted with how everybody knew what he wanted. And I sought to do that in how we were with our staff as well.
Thank you, Sam and Sashi. I wanted to move to our next question. And, we've heard so many successes that you've conveyed. And I wanted to hear also, whether there were some challenges you wanted to highlight and any other additional successes you might want to convey, along with any insights that you've gained along the way.
Sure. Sashi, do you want to begin, or would you like?
I'll jump in.
Okay. Alicia, one, given what is happening currently in the United States, and I want to be sensitive to this topic, but one of the things that I found always challenging when it came to managing staff wellness was how we led a staff through moments and times of grief. I think any school community, any school family is a microcosm of society. We have, beautiful moments of celebration and success, but we also have times of grief, whether it be illness of beloved staff members or loss. Sashi and I navigated our way through many of those moments, and they were always challenging. I thought that we, as a school community, did some things in almost a knee-jerk fashion. I was always mesmerized that if we learned of some sort of loss, that in the faculty room on a table would be a big yellow envelope where people could put monetary contributions and sign their name, and someone from the Teacher Sunshine Committee would navigate that, or our secretary would put an envelope and monitor the collections, and we'd make casseroles and bring them in and give gift cards. But one of the things that was always challenging is that after the shock and after the initial stage of that, revisiting and supporting people years after, when the real grief and the kind of other steps of grief begin to come in. So that always was a challenge, I think, that was in the back of my mind, and one of the places that I thought we could do better in helping. It's hard to heal as an individual. It's even more challenging to help a family, a school community, a school family heal as a unit. So that's certainly one of the challenges that I could speak to.
Think I could think about over here is at my new job in Florida. When I moved there, there was a lot of there were a lot of issues there at this place. There were the staff retention rate was very low. There was trust was at a all-time low. The administrators, they were constantly changing, so there was no consistency. So the staff was very unhappy. So I walked into something like that, and it took a lot to turn that around. There were so many challenges because the staff were not happy about having somebody new walk in. And I was not even from Florida, and they had somebody else that they wanted, but that didn't happen. And so they were not willing to give me that space and time. But slowly, I worked my way through that and was able to build trustworthy relationships. And for that, I had to use all the strategies that Sam talked about, the things that we did at Marlboro. And I was able to just use those at my current school. I always had this open door policy. The students could walk in anytime and we could talk about any problems. And like Sam said, the best discussions happened in the hallways. So you walk around before school began, when teachers are just standing outside their door, or at the end of the school day, or during lunch break. You just catch them, you just chat them up, and you build those relationships, get to know about them. And one of the one of the things that I realized over my experiences, both at Marlboro and at Easter Seals, is sometimes we shy away from listening to staff talk about personal things. We are like, oh, maybe, it's too much information, you don't want to know, but that is something I feel that we need to encourage, and we need to listen to staff when they want to share, because it is important to build that relationships, and that's the only way you would get there. And that helped me a lot where I was.
Thank you so much, Sam and Sashi. Really just reiterating that importance of relationship building, of trust and transparency as a foundation for changing the culture, creating a culture of staff wellness. I want to thank both of you for taking the time to share your experiences and your reflections and insights. The information you shared has been extremely informative, I think, and insightful. Sam, did you want to make any final comments around any insights that you gained before we move on to some questions?
Sure. I have a couple that are so simple in nature, but uncommon, I think. I went to a very good, I think, a very good graduate school where I studied ed leadership. And this wasn't a part, it wasn't in any book or any lesson, but it was something that I kind of learned accidentally. And I'll say it by way of just sharing with you briefly the incident. We're in an elementary school. Sashi and I had a K-5 building. I think there was around 700 or so students. So it was a good sized school. And it was picture day. And picture day meant that there was photographs being set up in our cafeteria, and there was a station in, I think, our gym at the time. And there was a different lunch schedule that we had developed, or I had developed. I don't want to loop Sashi into this one. This is my mistake, but anyway, it was a absolute disaster during lunch. We served 2 grades at a time in the lunchroom. 4 grades showed up. Massive congestion in the hallways, angry teachers, hungry students. It was an absolute train wreck. It was one of those moments I just wanted to click my heels and get out of. I felt the blood in my head all day long, and I didn't know what to do. The end of the day, I asked everybody to come to our library where we held our faculty meetings for a very quick faculty meeting. And I got up in front of the staff. And I won't tell you exactly what I said, but I said, I screwed up royally today. And I don't even know how I did it. But I messed up. And I'm really sorry. I'll make it up to you once I understand how I made the mistake. I have to tell you that after I said that, in the week ahead, I had more teachers approaching me in the hallway, coming into my office, thanking me for saying that I made a mistake and that I was sorry. It was one of the most profound experiences in my leadership. And I realized in that moment, after a lot of reflection, that admitting that I was wrong was something I never heard from any of the leaders that I worked for. And I would suggest probably doesn't happen a lot in education or even in corporate. But I think it showed the staff that I was human, and being human made me approachable, and being approachable and human made it okay that we are a family that can make mistakes and be okay. And from that point on, I really had a different relationship with the staff. It was profound. So I offer that as something. Another insight really quickly is can never underestimate the power of listening. Any good program, any good thing I did came from listening to people. And when you really truly listen, you show people that you care. It was just, and the essence of all principalship, I believe, is rooted in relationships. It's the foundation for all of the work a principal does, is within relationships. and you can't have good relationships unless you listen. So I know these are things that are really almost always simple, but getting up and telling people that you're wrong, you made a mistake, and that you feel bad and that you're sorry was one of the most powerful professional experiences of my life. And I felt very vulnerable doing it. And I realized the more vulnerable I could be as a leader, little did I know that I was creating opportunities for myself to become an even better leader for my staff. It was oxymoronic at its best, because I always felt being vulnerable made me feel weak. And I soon learned, or long time learning, but that vulnerability really is a source of strength. And when you're that way with your staff, they will follow your lead, and they will maintain their trust in you, because they know that you have the capacity to be a human just like they are.
Thank you so much, Sam. And I think that also follows with really modeling that that vulnerability, so that staff may also feel more comfortable with sharing times when they might not feel at their best, and also asking for what they need. So thank you again, both Sam and Sashi, for sharing your experiences and insights. And because of time, I have to apologize. We don't have the space for a question and answer period right now, but please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you might have. We will, we're happy to answer anything over email. And so feel free to add any questions in the chat if you do have them, and or through email, and we will get back to you. I'm now going to turn things over to Dr. Murphy, and she's going to explain the evaluation portion of our session today and some other important closing information.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you all for joining. Just very quickly, I mentioned in the beginning that we appreciate your feedback. If you would be willing to complete our evaluation, you can scan the QR code on your screen, or you can click on the link that's been placed in the chat and just take a couple minutes to complete our evaluation survey. We would be very appreciative. Next slide. We did want to let you know about a couple other resources that we have that are, one is available now classroom-wise. It's Wellbeing Information Strategies for Educators, a free online mental health literacy program. And that is available through our website. And the POWER program, which is a tier 2 intervention to assist, group-based intervention to assist students with emotion regulation. That will be coming out probably later in the summer. It's a implementation manual that you can take and use to begin this program. And we would be thrilled if you would check them out and potentially incorporate them into your work going forward. We also have a wellness and recovery resiliency podcast that Michelle, who you heard from early on, has produced, Flourishing at Work, a plan for helping professionals, which of course includes educators. You can access it wherever you get podcasts, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's also available on Podbean. And we encourage you to reach out to us with any questions, information, ideas, topics that you'd like more training on. Our information is available here. You can connect with us via phone or email or via our website. And we are also on the social media outlets as well. Do we have one more slide, Alicia, or is that it?
No, this is it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all. We appreciate you joining us. Don't forget that we have one more session scheduled for June 15th at 3 o'clock. You can register using the link in the chat. We appreciate all of our presenters, and all of you for attending. Good luck finishing out the school year and hope you enjoy your summer, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Best wishes for a great ending to your school year and a nice summer.